That's it. If you fight hard on a losing point, then you're investing a lot of emotional energy. You're getting a worse opinion of you being created or fostered by the audience because they're seeing you like try to fight on a massive L point, and it's going to poison the rest of the arguments you make because that's going to stick stronger in their mind. Whereas like you make one joke, you know, you're a cuck or whatever, and then you just move on to the next thing, and then you focus on the areas that you can fight the strongest in.
All right. Well, I have a couple questions. Number one, who the hell is Rob?
Rob Noor or whatever? Nowhere?
Oh, Rob Noor. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something he does really well, I don't know if you noticed this, but like he'll be like, Hillary Clinton was murdering people like Seth Rich, and she did her email stuff, and it was super f***ed up and everything, and I don't think that was good. He'll be like, Hillary didn't email Seth Rich, dude. Do you have any proof of that? Okay, yeah, she did, but the email stuff is really important. He'll concede so quickly, you don't even know you won a point. He'll just concede and then move on, and you're like,
sure,
wait,
that may be the case.
Yeah, I should feel good about that. But he'll concede it and then move on to the next strongest point so quickly. And rhetorically, that's an incredibly effective thing, because now in the audience's mind, you didn't even get a W. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah, they're just talking about something. They're going to the next thing, you know? Yeah.
It's just all conspiracy theorists are like that. You put one thing down, they say, yeah, but all right, here's the next one, here's the next one. I don't know. It just feels...
Sure, but I think Rob is exceptionally good at making it look like he's never conceded a single point, because he'll say, okay, and then move on to the next thing, and you're like done before you even realize
to his base, the base that's already predisposed to like wanting to hear his side or whatever.
Well, I think even rhetorically, I think that to anybody, it sounds good. This is why one of the debate things that I've gotten, and I'm trying to hold people more to this. I think I did it a few times on the Fresh Fit podcast. If you feel like you've won on a point, you need to pull that concession out of them. You need to get them to say it so that the audience can understand it. It's almost like directing a movie. Like you have to explicitly show things to people to make them understand. You can't be like subtle about it. So like, well, a couple of the times they brought up this like one-ended open relationship. Like I had to make sure that the audience understood, you are only talking about like a 1% of men that can do this, right? This isn't going to be for 99.9% of the audience. And even though that was kind of implied based on everything that was said before, I needed to hear them say it so that the audience knew nothing that we're talking about right now applies to you guys. This is some 1% of 1% shit. Yeah.
Okay. You've been doing this for a long time.
True.
So, you know, I understand that you have a lot of experience with this, but
I always take critiques too. So yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure I agree. Like right now, I'm kind of in a space where I feel like you are the energy that you put out, and that like even if you have insecurities, even if you have things that you worry about, even if you don't fully 100% believe all the things that you're saying, if you put out the energy that you do, you're gonna fool a lot of people. You're gonna convince a lot of people, and yeah, I don't know, like. Reading the subreddit and stuff like that, that's going to give me a gauge on the most vocal people, what the most vocal people have to say. I'm just curious what that would have looked like if, like, instead of just letting it fall flat and you just being like, yeah, 6'4" NBA player, yeah, sure. If you had been like, yeah, sure, listen, maybe sex isn't that important to us in our relationship. That's a thing that we don't really want to deny. All the arguments that you know. That
yeah, I know what you're saying, but the issue is that, like, when I'm arguing, I have to stand on... So this is part of me acknowledging mutual descriptive truths. When I'm fighting with them, we have to be standing in the same dimension. I can't be standing in another world screaming at them because I'm going to look insane. So comments like that, like, oh, well, the sex thing isn't that important, blah, 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 blah. Any phrase that I utter like that, it might be consistent from my worldview, but I am striking against core fundamental tenets of what these other people believe. In their mind, and they enumerated or elaborated on this later, in their mind, a woman that's f***ing another person is doing so because you're deficient. A woman that's f***ing another person is doing so because she doesn't respect you. A woman that's f***ing another person isn't truly in love with you because a woman that loves her man wouldn't do that. So for me to just kind of casually brush over them, like, oh, we just both have sex because it's fun for both of us. Even if I believe that, in their minds, they're hearing these things. It would be like going into a debate and be like, oh yeah, 1 + 1 is 3, 2 × 2 is like 10. And sometimes I think 10 divided by 5 can be 17. It would be the equivalent to uttering that, where every single thing I'm saying, the audience would be like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? Everything would sound insane. I would have spent a lot of time building up that argument in a really foundational way. It wouldn't be something I could just brush off in a friendly manner. Although I encourage you to try if you want to try that, but...
Well, I mean, I feel like I do that pretty regularly. I don't have obviously the wealth of conversations that you've had or at the scale that you've had them, but that is like my sort of strategy is at the very least, I've seen you do this. You plant a seed, right? In that moment, you could have been like, we can talk about that. It may not be exactly as you think it might be. Like if you want to have a more in-depth discussion about my open relationship, we'd like to. The way you characterize it, I wouldn't agree with it.
I think he DM'd me to chat to come on and like argue about it later. I think this morning I saw that. So maybe we might do that at some point. I wouldn't mind having a conversation about that explicitly. But that has to be a dedicated. It has to be a dedicated, full-on conversation.
The rest of the conversation would have to be about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can't be something I bring up in passing because I need to hit. There's a whole strategy to having that conversation that's going to be incredibly challenging. Yeah, and it all has to be handled with like extreme care. Yeah.
in that moment, even I think if you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, I think maybe in hindsight, the optimal way to approach that would have been like, shit, like you said, saying that, hey, it doesn't bother me that much if we both fuck her, it doesn't bother me that much if she's like messing around with other guys, and it doesn't bother her that much if I'm messing around with other girls or something like that. If that would have been 1 + 1 = 3 to that person, like planting seed or something. Like, have you ever thought about maybe why it wouldn't bother us that much, but it bothers you that much?
It bothers them because we have a foundationally and fundamentally different way in which we do.
I'm just saying, planting that seed of saying like, well, like maybe it bothers you more than it bothers me, and it would, bother
because it doesn't sound. They won't even believe what I'm saying. They won't even believe it. It just sounds like a huge cope.
Well, it could. It depends on the energy that you put out, and I think you're generally
I understand, and I do think I'm pretty good, but that's why, like, I can analyze this 50 million ways. Like, I can say in kind of like a passive blasé way, and it's going to sound like I don't want to talk about it much because I'm like coping, or I can be very bombastic about, like, yeah, I don't give a fuck if my wife is getting railed. Like, go for it. That's going to sound like a massive cope. It's like, oh my god, he's getting like he's so on. Well, sure, but I can be like, oh, it's cool if she wants to fuck other people. Like, that's fine. You could, but then people interpret it as, oh, he's being meek about it because he's really unconfident about it. Like, there is no way. It's just too foundational. I understand what you're saying. We just agree to disagree here. I think that is too foundational to the core of what they believe to ever be able to approach that in some rhetorical way where it comes off sounding good. It's just impossible. It's like the equivalent of like trying to sell a dude on like getting f***ed by a bad dragon dildo like every night. Like, how do you make that sound like it's an okay thing that people won't like think is like super hardcore? Like, there's just no way. There's no, like, some things can't be overcome with rhetoric. They cut too hard against some fundamental belief, I think.
I don't know. Listen, even if it's not them individually on the podcast, it's the 40-40-20 rule, right? Like, it's the people that heard your response to that versus what, I think could have been the more optimal response. The number of people that were just like, if they thought that you were just like a useless cuck and nothing you had to say about relationships was valuable because of this detail, I think the way that it came off just completely re-entrenched 100% of those people when maybe you could have reached 1 or 2.
I understand what you're saying. I just totally disagree. Because I think anything that I would have done that you're suggesting would have re-entrenched it way harder. Me trying to fight on that point or arguing anything, I think that would have re-entrenched it even harder because everything just comes off as a cope. And it's just like, well, but you're telling me to take like a different rhetorical approach. Like, I feel like I'd rather just move on as quickly as possible because there are so many other weak spots in that argument that I can hit on so much better and more effectively than ever trying to win on this ground. It's just, but we're circling the drain on it, but yeah, you can have the last word again.
Sure. Whatever. No, I think we've talked to death.
Sure.
The second thing is, I feel like when I hear you guys talk about women, and I'm curious if this is a rhetorical thing or if you have better thoughts about this, but like when I hear you talk about like LA women or Miami women or like the way that the people on the show talk about women, I understand from their perspective. And like the way Sneeko and fucking Andrew Tate talks about women, their entire experience with women is confined to like club chicks, like 18 to 22-year-old women that haven't established themselves, women that don't have any skills yet or anything like that. Like, they're not established. They don't have really anything to offer other than being young and hot or something like that.
Keep in mind, you got to be careful when you're saying that. All of those are really good traits. Because while you see a woman that's inexperienced, in their world, that's a woman that's coachable. While you see a woman that's just young and hot, they see a woman that has been masculinized by Western society. While you see somebody that doesn't offer anything of extreme value, they see somebody that they can make dependent on themselves that will only enrich their lives. Everything you're saying is a negative, and their worldview is an extreme positive. That's something you have to keep in mind, because you can't just start going in on things because people are going to look at you like, yeah, and of course she has no experience.
I don't think it's necessarily a negative, but these are the traits, right? But I feel like that that sort of conflicts with when they talk about women being inferior. Women can't do this better than men. Women can't do that. Women aren't suited for this. Women aren't suited for that. I know because of my personal experience, the women I talk to, this, that, or the other. Like, that's what I'm referring to. It's like, it sounds like they're just not interfacing with any like professional women in professional spaces or educated or academic.
Yeah, to some extent that's true, but they also don't like those women either because they view those women as being masculine, right? They want coachable, docile, demure women. That's like their goal.
Isn't there some sort of rhetorical jujitsu you can pull there where you can be like, well, maybe you're not man enough to handle a woman like that or something like that?
No, to somebody
I wouldn't put it like that. But
that's what I would put it like if I was talking to somebody similar to me. That's what I would say. Because I've done those arguments where there's a whole line of thought where I can be like, oh, it sounds like you're just threatened by a woman that is confident. It sounds like this will work against people that have kind of shaky worldviews. But when I'm on a show like that, these guys have been fleshing out their worldview for months, over a year now, right? Maybe years, but maybe before they were on the show. The Myron dudes dude is a smart guy. He's not a dumb. I'm not going to be able to just like trap him with an easy 1 or 2 gotcha questions. Like you can, 1, tell he prepared for this, and 2, he's a sharp dude. He's not an idiot, even if I disagree with his worldview. So when you're dealing with people, this is a trick I figured out. When you're dealing with people with very consistent worldviews that are internally consistent, if you try to throw a gotcha question or you try to undermine them with an easy like rhetorical punch, they will destroy you and make you look horrible if you're not ready. So for instance, this is something I noticed when it comes to dealing with conspiracy theorists, you don't